morning, everybody. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to come join us today. We're the DCPS Teacher Retention and Recognition team, and we're looking forward to sharing a little bit about the way we're approaching teacher retention and recognition in DCPS. I know you heard from our chancellor a little bit this morning talking about some of the things that happen at a district level, so we'll dive a little more into those. Before we jump in, I'd love to get a sense of who's in the room now. Can you raise your hand if you're a current school leader or principal? Hi, welcome. What about a teacher? Current teacher? Cool. And then if you work with a CMO or at the district level? Awesome, great, thanks guys. So we've got two sort of main objectives for today. The first is to just share some generally about our approach as a district and some of the district strategies we're using to retain and recognize our best teachers. We're increasingly moving our focus to school-based retention because we see that that's the biggest area for growth that we have in DC. And then we also just want to really build on all the expertise and perspectives that are in the room. So a large part will be generating and sharing ideas amongst each other. Just to quickly introduce ourselves, my name is Rachel Brown. I started my career in education as a 2005 DC Corps member teaching in DCPS. And before returning to the central office, I worked in thought leadership with Bellwether Education Partners.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Danielle Edwards. I started teaching in DCPS in 2008 through DC Teaching Fellows. And then after that, I went to work with the New Teacher Project TNTP for a little bit before coming back to the district in this role.
Hi, I'm Ben Theodore. I'm a 2011 DC Region Corps member. I taught in Prince George's County, high school algebra, and I just joined the Teacher Retention and Recognition team in September.
So showing this quote might be a little bit like preaching to the choir with the people in this room, but we feel like it underscores all of our work, that teachers are the most important resource in our schools. And we know from research that underperforming or low-income children who have a great teacher for 3 years in a row can catch up to their higher income peers. And so teachers themselves can actually close the achievement gap. That also means that retaining those teachers is all the more important. When we lose great teachers in our schools, several things happen. We have to take on really expensive and time-consuming work to recruit, select, and train their replacements. We know that we often lose young teachers before they reach their full potential in the classroom. Teacher attrition can hurt morale among people who stay. Those of us who've worked in schools where there has been high turnover, we've seen it impact the culture of those schools. And our students in our high poverty schools are the most impacted. Our research, both in DCPS and nationally, shows that turnover is higher in our higher poverty schools. But those of us who work in schools and systems also know that great teacher retention does not mean retaining every teacher. It means retaining our best teachers, and it means retaining the teachers who are right for your building and the culture of the students that you are serving. And also, one of the things that we think about as a team in DCPS is not sort of reporting one number, it's like this is our teacher retention rate, although we will share that with you in a few minutes, is we're trying to frame the thinking around what is retention of teachers within our district across schools. Maybe a particular school is not a good fit for a really exceptional teacher, so we try to make sure that they find a school home that is a good fit so we can keep them. Sometimes teachers want to move on to different levels of work. We have teachers who come work with us in the central office for a couple of years and then go back to the classroom. We have teachers that want to move into master educator roles or instructional coach roles. And so also just trying to think about how can we make sure people feel like they're still involved in the mission without having them to leave the system entirely. So here's some of the things that the ways that we're thinking about this as a district. I know this slide is a little hard to read, but this is our Office of Human Capital Theory of Action in DCPS. Our focus and overall goal is, of course, making sure that all of our students, no matter where they live in the city, have an access to an extraordinary education. So we do that by first recruiting and selecting the very best possible talent that we can, setting our new hires up for success, and then rigorously evaluating their performance. And based on the performance evaluations, we're able to differentiate our approach. We ultimately remove truly ineffective teachers from our schools. We provide targeted support to those who need it. And then we focus on retaining the very best and extending their reach. And that's the focus of our team and really what we'll be talking about a lot today, even though, of course, there's a lot else that goes into all those other pieces. And of course, the ultimate aim is to increase student achievement. Before we dive into school-based work, I'd like to give a general overview of some of the things we're doing as a district, some of which the Chancellor talked about a little this morning. For those of you who have read the New Teacher Project's Irreplaceables report, they did a subsection of that report specifically about retention in DC. And that and some other research that's come out in the last year has confirmed that our sort of differentiated approach to retention is working. We ultimately retain a much higher percentage of our best teachers than our lowest performing teachers. We know that our performance-based compensation is really a driving factor in keeping our very best in the district. You heard our Teacher of the Year this morning, Kathy Howell-Makel, sort of talking about that. And then because we've done a lot of investment in making our selection process more rigorous, when we do have teachers leave who are low performing, we found that new teachers who come in to replace them tend to do a better job, even if they are novices. This slide shows the compensation of our teachers in DCPS versus some other national districts. DCPS is this sort of dark blue line on the far right, and then heading to the left, the other districts that are being compared, the left. The other districts who are comparing to are Atlanta Public Schools, Charlotte-Mecklenburg, New York City, Philadelphia, and Boston. And that first group of bars over there shows teacher salary in the first year, and then this group here shows teacher salary in the 7th year of teaching in DCPS. These parts show the bonuses that teachers are eligible for every year. So this baseline is the base salary that teachers earn, and these are our bonuses. We know that nobody comes into education specifically motivated by compensation, but we also know that it's really important that our teachers feel that they are compensated and treated like true professionals in order to match all the rhetoric that they're constantly hearing about how teaching is the most important job and so forth. So we've spent a lot of time investing in our compensation strategy to make sure that our teachers are being paid a lot. A highly effective teacher in one of our highest needs schools can be earning 6 figures in DCPS within 4 years of joining the district. And we found that that's really been a game changer in terms of retention of our best teachers. This slide shows the top reasons that high-performing teachers who are planning to leave give for why they're choosing to leave the classroom. Again, it's a little harder to read, but it's also from the Irreplaceables report. DCPS is again over here on the far left, and then it's compared to 3 other urban districts. This green line down here shows compensation as a reason for leaving. So in the other districts, compensation is in the top 3 reasons that teachers cite for leaving the classroom. In DC, it's the 20th reason. Instead, we see teachers in DCPS most commonly citing school-based reasons for why they're choosing to leave the classroom. They're dissatisfied with their school leadership, their workload, or the culture in their school. So this data makes us feel mixed, right? We're really happy that we've taken compensation off the table as a reason for teachers leaving, but it tells us that a lot of the work we still have to do is happening at the school level. We see Impact, our teacher evaluation system, is a strategy for differential retention in DCPS. It was implemented in 2009. I know it got a lot of coverage. You guys may already know about Impact. But teachers are evaluated under 4 factors: student progress, classroom observation by both administrators and external master educators, collaboration in their school building, and what's called professionalism, which encompasses a whole lot of little things like showing up at school. The kinds of supports that teachers receive under Impact include conferences, after observations, targeted support based on their content level or their school, and we really think of Impact as being a support and development tool, not just an evaluation tool. It matters for retention as well. This slide shows the overall percentage of teachers retained broken down by their performance on Impact. We retain 92% of our highly effective teachers in DCPS, but only about 59–60% of our minimally effective teachers. So overall, teacher retention is high at the district, but at the school level, we see it vary considerably. I also just want to pause a little bit on this slide and talk about the ways that we sort of can move out ineffective teachers. Sometimes when we talk about evaluation systems, it's like people are firing their ways to a great teaching force. Actually, in DC, we only remove about 1% of our teachers every year because of their performance on Impact. Instead, we found that teachers who teach in DCPS who are low performing tend to self-select out of our system. And again, the teachers that we're hiring to replace them tend to be a little stronger. And so through that way, we're trying to get to a stronger force. A couple other quick district strategies I'll talk about before we move into school level stuff is recognition. We think that seeing the praises of our best teachers is a huge important part of our work. We also engage in a lot of high-touch retention and individualized outreach to our best teachers. Our team spends a lot of time emailing, on the phone, meeting with our teachers, making sure that they have what they need and that they feel like someone in the district, and especially in the central office, knows who they are and knows that they're great. Professional development, making sure that teachers have what they need in order that they feel they can continue to grow. LIFT, our teacher career ladder, I'll talk about more in a second. And again, school-based retention, really trying to make sure principals have strategies to retain their best teachers at the school level. And this isn't easy. Teachers and principals both have a lot on their plates: operations, instruction, enrollment, everything. So making sure that principals have things that they can use right away is another thing that we're focusing on. And these bottom two things are where we'll spend the rest of our time. Yeah.
Sorry, you may have already touched on this or will soon, but could you just quickly define high-touch retention?
Yeah, so we think of high-touch retention as being anything individualized. So if a teacher gets a call or an email from us in March saying, hey, we know you're awesome, you've been with us for several years, just want to see how you're feeling about the fall. We really hope you're coming back, but we're happy to have a conversation about whether your current school is a good fit, whether there's leadership opportunities you want to pursue, or if there's anything else you just want to talk about. This is something that we've been trying to ramp up in recent years, and we've been surprised as a team how many teachers reach out saying, I've taught in DCPS for 20 years, this is the first time someone's ever said this to me. And so we're trying to make this more of an expectation in our system. Yeah.
My question is, the statistics that you're showing, the numbers, are they from, I know it's the entire city, but where I work, and listening to the news and
In the high poverty schools? Yeah.
and doing a lot of reading,
Yeah.
the work that we're doing with Impact is great, and I understand that, and I'm pleased with many aspects. But the problem that I see is that schools like mine, we constantly, I don't want to be the best teacher or name, one of the best teachers in the building constantly. I don't want that. I want more teachers that are highly effective or are being identified as strong teachers. And being in my 22nd year, it's constantly a battle. We're talking about turnover rate, and I know if I look at a friend's school uptown, they don't have the turnover rate, and they have a high retention. But you come down to the schools in my area, and we talk about the money and these different aspects. But to be honest with you, it's not the money, because we did a study maybe 5 years ago when we offered uptown teachers to come downtown, and we only had like 3 to 5 teachers, and it didn't work.
Yeah, you're at Kenley, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a current DCPS teacher, for those of you who don't know. So yes, our numbers look different when we look at our high poverty schools versus our low poverty schools. And something that I didn't get into a lot before, and I will in a second, is that performance-based compensation is very much differentiated by where you teach. You're only eligible for those high annual performance bonuses if you teach in a high poverty school. So the compensation is one piece. But also, as I mentioned, we know that our school level retention varies a lot, and we do see higher turnover in our highest needs schools. And so that's again why we're trying to focus more and more about what's happening at the school level. Some of our high poverty schools actually are bright spots in the district in terms of teacher retention. So we've tried to really listen and learn from what's happening in those schools, and so we can try and replicate it elsewhere. Because again, when you have high turnover, it absolutely affects the culture, and it can make your job harder as a teacher in one of those schools to not be surrounded by peers who are working at the same level that you are.
Well, the point that I was trying to get to is that it's not. I mean, if we want to bridge the gap or change, shrink that gap, and to have those 3 teachers those 3 positive teachers in a row to help do that. To me, we have to focus on this tool impact of getting rid of the low performing teachers. But unfortunately, in my school and schools like mine, it has a reverse effect. Those highly effective teachers that could really give our students the 3 years of positive teaching. They're not willing to come down because of it. And if we want to make these changes, I understand the chancellor just hired a gentleman to help
The dean,
black
Dr.
students,
Simmons,
right.
yeah.
Well, a big part of that is maybe the tweak in that would allow some of those uptown teachers and those teachers that are in those poverty schools to not always be judged or
Yeah.
according to the students.
Yeah.
That's the biggest piece. I have friends that would love to leave those high performing schools and those softer zones to come down to make a big change. And consequently, several of them are members of Teach for America.
Yeah.
But the fear is, I have a family, I have this to do. I can't come down and my life is based on a student who our kids go through so many different problems and turmoil weekly and depend on them to get these test scores.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and it's something that we hear a lot when we talk with teachers in those schools, and it's a common thing that's a tough focus of conversation for us. Some of the impact's been in place since 2009. LIFT, the career ladder, which I'll talk about in just a second, was only implemented, this will be going into the 3rd year of LIFT. And so we're now getting data seeing places where we've revised impact a couple times, and we're about to go into a whole nother round of impact revision. And we're going to do a whole series this fall of impact perception, because something that we need to do a better job of collecting is the qualitative experiences of teachers and find ways to be more real about the way that's playing out in different schools. So I'm really glad you raised that now. Real quick, and then I need to move on.
Sorry, question, just because I'm not as familiar with all the language.
Yeah.
Your point is that impact is a deterrent in these higher need areas
It
because
can
of
be.
tests.
Because it can feel harder to be a high performer on impact when you're working in a higher needs.
Got it. I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
Correct.
Impact is your evaluation system.
Yes.
Got it. I was like,
Yeah, sorry. Lots of
I've
acronyms.
missed it somewhere.
So I'll talk briefly about our teacher career ladder. This is something that's really personal to me as a teacher who left the classroom. We know that traditionally, for a long time, the only way for teachers to advance in their careers was, say, to become a principal or become an administrator, move out of the classroom. And the goal behind designing LIFT was to change that. As teachers move through the 5 stages of LIFT, they become eligible for increased compensation, but also more autonomy and additional access to leadership opportunities, so they can take on more responsibility in their roles. At the core, LIFT was trying to make sure that teachers feel like DCPS is a place where, at any point in their careers, whether they are a master veteran or a brand new novice, that there's room for them to grow whilst also staying a teacher. Movement up the career ladder is based on impact, which is the performance evaluation system. And teachers at the highest stages, so the distinguished and expert teacher stages on the far right, need to have demonstrated highly effective performance on impact for several years to reach those stages. The guidebooks for LIFT are on your tables if anyone wants to learn more and dig more into it. We're also happy to answer questions about it later. Yeah.
What percentage of teachers are in each of those stages?
Okay, so right here. So this will be the very first year that we have expert teachers. Since movement up is based on impact, and impact was only implemented in 2009, when we rolled out LIFT, teachers were placed on the LIFT scale based on their previous performance on impact. So just by timeline, this will be the first year that we've actually had any teachers qualify to be expert teachers. Ms. Hallowell Makel, who was on the panel this morning with the Chancellor, will be one of our first expert teachers next year. We have about 3,500 teachers in DCPS, and next year we'll have about 275 expert teachers. And then the rest is more recent, it's broader categories going down. I can, if you email me later, I can send you the exact numbers. Also, as you move up Lyft, you become eligible, teachers in our high poverty schools become eligible for significantly more compensation. For example, if you are a distinguished teacher and you move to the expert teacher stage, you would become eligible for an additional 5 years of service credit. So on our salary scale, it would say as if you've been teaching for an additional 5 years and you had, you'd be at that to your base salary. And then if you weren't already in the PhD salary band, you'd be moved to the PhD salary band. And you can never go backwards on Lyft. So if the teacher moves from the advanced teacher stage to the expert teacher stage, they can receive an additional 12 years worth of service credit to their base salary. Also, and this is in the Lyft guidebook in front of you too, every teacher receives a guidebook at the start of the school year, and in the back, starting on page 31, is a catalog of leadership opportunities. When we were designing Lyft and talking with teachers, we heard that a major reason they left the classroom was because they wanted more leadership opportunities. But we also heard from teachers who were actually doing a lot of cool things, and we realized it wasn't that these opportunities didn't exist, it's that teachers didn't know what they were or how to access them. So the idea behind this part of the guidebook was to make a kind of course catalog organized by things like policy opportunities or curriculum or writing or mentoring opportunities that teachers could access and know how to be a part of. So also with Lyft, our team sends out an email blast every other week to our entire teaching force, letting them know about upcoming deadlines, opportunities and grants that they can apply for, and spotlighting other teacher leaders. A couple quick things that we're working on now going forward, and then we'll kind of transition into school-based retention strategies, is first is part-time roles. We hear a lot from, especially from ambitious younger teachers, that they love teaching, but the workload is a lot, and they feel like, hey, I'm just about to have my second kid, or hey, I have an ill spouse, and I just can't keep up with this workload. And so we've tried to create an initiative where principals will be more creative with their scheduling and create part-time roles for those teachers, so they can stay teaching, but don't have to leave the classroom entirely. So this was a pilot that started just last year, and we had 9 schools decide to create part-time roles for this coming school year and hope to expand that going forward. The second is sabbaticals. We constantly hear from teachers that they just sometimes need a break. They're committed to this work, they want it to be their life's work, but they want to step out and do something else for a while before heading back in. So we are thinking about ways that we can provide sabbaticals in a cost-effective way, because it's very expensive at the district level to do something like that. And perhaps around an idea where teachers could go work with an external organization, a think tank, a private company, a foundation, something for a year, and then return to the classroom, bringing back those new knowledge and skills. And then lastly, as I said, our team is really focused on school-based retention right now, because that's where our data shows us that we need the most work. This past year, we looked at our data and saw which schools, especially in our high poverty neighborhoods, are doing a great job and a not so great job of retaining their very best teachers. And we went to those schools and sat down with teacher leaders and school leaders and tried to just hear what are you doing in those bright spots that's keeping your teachers coming back. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to share some more about what we heard.
Great. So as Rachel explained, we have a lot of really great retention strategies that are happening at the district level. When we move down to the school level, it varies greatly. And so before I move into some of the strategies that we have come up with at the very specific school level, I want to go back to the irreplaceable study for just a second to talk about some of the strategies coming out of that study that great school leaders can do as well. And a lot of them just really revolve around actively speaking to your high-performing teachers so that they actually know who they are. We found that a lot of our high-performing teachers don't even know that they're considered high-performing by their school leader, which is a really big problem. And so the more that you talk to them and let them know that they're valued and respected as a top teacher within their school, find out what their interests and their needs are so that you can encourage them to take on additional responsibilities, whether it's in your school or within the district or other organizations, so that you can help grow them as well as leaders is really important. So just setting aside the time to speak with them on a regular basis is extremely important. So we're going to talk a little bit about some school level strategies that have been really effective in some of our schools, like Rachel talked about, that have been considered bright spots and have really great retention rates within DCPS. These strategies can be found on the resource that's on your table called Retain Your High Performing Teachers. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about each strategy, and then I'm going to give actual case studies of principals who are doing some of these strategies really well. And then after that, I'd love to open it up to talk or to hear more from you all about what strategies are working specifically in your schools, if you're a school leader, or even if you're still at the teacher level, what strategies you've seen be really helpful in retaining high-performing teachers like yourselves. So the first one is recognizing your high-performing teachers. And before I go into it, I do want to say that the compilation of strategies we came up with on this document were created in partnership with central office staff, current teachers, current school leaders, and are things that our school leaders are already doing within the building. We know that it's a top priority for school leaders to work on talent management and make sure that they're retaining their top teachers. So these are meant to be strategies that are pretty bite-sized and can be implemented at all points during the school year. So we'll go ahead and dive into the first one, which is recognizing your high-performing teachers publicly. Again, it's something that is really, really important to not all teachers, but definitely a lot of teachers, and knowing who they are. Taking the time to actually make sure that they know it, and that you can model examples of excellence among all to kind of keep expectations high and know kind of what the standard is for great teaching within your school building is really, really important. So whether you choose to do that during staff meetings or have a teacher of the month, there are different ways to do it, but it is very important. The second one is finding ways to show personal appreciation. My personal favorite way of doing this is through just actual conversations with teachers, making sure that you make sure that they know that they're valued, and that you figure out really kind of what is of interest and value to them. How do they want to contribute more to the school? Where do they want to grow within their careers? And as a leader, actively finding ways to encourage them to either seek those out on their own or bringing opportunities to them. So our first case study is Principal Raina Johnson at Stanton Elementary School, who does a couple of these things really well and often throughout the year. The first is during every weekly staff meeting, she does public shout-outs where they're peer-to-peer, so teachers can shout out each other, and then administrators also shout each other out at every staff meeting. The second one, which I really love, is the retention conversations that she has with each teacher, and these happen starting around December or January. She makes it a point to schedule a conversation with every single teacher at that time, which can be a little time consuming. They go from about 30 minutes to an hour, really however much time the teacher needs in order to make sure that they feel like each teacher is having an equal opportunity to have their voice heard. But it allows her to have an early opportunity to plan and figure out what those teachers' desires are for the upcoming school year, which is also really important. So I'll stop right here and would love to hear some strategies from you all that have worked at your schools or that you all are trying to implement within your schools to retain your top teachers that focus around either publicly acknowledging them or finding ways to show them personal appreciation. Yep.
So I'm a board member for a very small district. It's not a unified school district, but as a teacher, I felt that we didn't do enough of appreciating our teachers. So this was the first year that we had an actual Teacher of the Year competition amongst all of our 20 schools. So what the principals ended up having to do was a nomination process where all the teachers nominated amongst each other, and then the principal selected who was the most high-performing teacher for that school. And then every school had their nominee. So they all got awarded $1,000 as instructional supplies, because we couldn't actually give them an extra bonus. So it was what do we do to make sure that they feel valued? So we made sure to give them that, and then from those 20 teachers, the superintendent sat down with all the different directors, and we chose the one Teacher of the Year for the district. And at our board meeting, we had a public ceremony giving each one of them their little apple. But aside from that, the Teacher of the Year actually got sent off to the LA County competition. And she got, since she was the Teacher of the Year for the whole district, we gave her a $5,000 instructional supplies plus technology. So for her, it was oh wait, I didn't know that you guys did that. And I kind of almost did it as a way of, she had just gotten her PhD, and I knew that she wanted to leave our district. So for me, it was no, I need you to know how much you're valued. What can we do to make sure that you feel it? And I think after that, I was now everyone's looking forward to, are we doing this next year? And who's going to get it next year? Who's going to be the one sent off for the district? So I think that helped a lot.
That's awesome. Any other strategies? Yeah?
Mine's not such a strategy as a comment and really a question to you. My name is Lainey Shaler, and I'm kind of your counterpart in Denver. I work for Denver Public Schools, and so we're doing a lot of this kind of similar work. And so I work very closely with our school leaders, and particularly the retention conversations. It's so simple, but also I think the way that the system is structured, there's kind of perverse incentives. And so teachers don't always disclose that information because they want to be able to make sure that they have a job.
Yeah.
Like, that's their livelihood, so I get that. But it's really hard then when it comes to filling those vacancies when kids are coming in a couple of days.
Exactly.
Reality. So I'm just wondering, like, do you coach principals on like how to kind of have those conversations in a low stakes situation so that the teacher does feel inclined to kind of disclose more of their true feelings and what's really going to happen?
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. We specifically work mostly with teachers, although we do have lots of conversations with school leaders. We also have a principal team that works very closely with principals in order to develop some of those skills as well, especially around leadership and talent management. From our end, we focus on a lot of that, specifically with teachers, but in having conversations, we are kind of seen as kind of a neutral party towards our teachers. A lot of teachers come and disclose information to us, and we kind of either work with them specifically to kind of figure out what might be great fits for them that will still allow them to stay in the district if that is their desire. Or we also really just make sure that we're focusing on what are trends within specific schools. If we're seeing a lot of teachers have specific anecdotes around either wanting to leave or having specific concerns, we pay particular attention to that so that we can focus on kind of what are those spots that we want to continue to focus on. Do you want to add something?
You raise a really good point about trust, right? So like if and none of these things can be done totally in isolation. Like you can't have really great, honest retention conversations if the teachers and the school leaders don't trust each other. And so this would, we feel like, is one strategy that a principal can hopefully use to start building that greater trust, to say like, hey, just so you know, maybe I've never told you this before, but I think you're great and I want to make sure you're coming back next year. What do you need in order to make that happen? Like, is it like someone who's been teaching second grade forever and maybe they want to try third grade? Or is it maybe they just want to feel like they have a chance to talk to the principal about something they're seeing happen at their school? So it's hard. You can't just magically have retention conversations with your teachers and assume they're all going to be like, great, I'm coming back. But it's part of a broader strategy of trying to have more communication between a school leader and a teacher.
And just quickly, that concern of like the timeline of the disclosure, so in the absence of trust, teachers waiting until the last minute to inform their principal they're not coming back. DCPS has a structure in place called the Declaration of Intent Not to Return, where there are financial incentives and penalties associated with disclosing whether or not you're coming back next year within a certain timeline. So that structure helps a lot with, like, teachers in some cases will incur a financial penalty if they don't disclose that they're not returning past a certain point.
And that doesn't mean that you have to, that
I
was
wanted
great.
to add just an additional context. My name is Chelsea. I work at ES Prep Public Schools in Houston. And so we've actually implemented a few things that we do as far as just to have those retention conversations and to make it okay. First off, it starts from the top. We call all of our employees talent, and we value our talent, and we treat them like they are talent. And by showing them that we value their leadership, we value their voice, we value all of those things. So we really want to make that conversation natural. We understand that you are a hot commodity. We understand, like, and we value you as an instructional leader in your classroom. We value you as a part of this movement with us. And so making those conversations like happen more naturally has been easier for us. We have like many checkpoints throughout the year as far as like a mid-year conversation as well as an end-of-year conversation. And so just really openly just talking about that and having that conversation with that teacher. But it starts because we've set that foundation initially as letting them know that they are of value. And also I have only been working for ES Prep not even a year. It'll be a year Monday, and I've already had 2 jobs. So within the first 6 months, I was vocal with myself and with my managers as far as not feeling challenged and wanting to be pushed, and that was the reason I came to ES Prep. And as a direct result, they found me another job that did that for me. And so they, like at the end of each year, they like, you map out like what is your trajectory. And so like my managers know what I want to do within the next year, 2 years, and 5 years. And so therefore we openly have those conversations, and they think of PDs, and so they have those conversations naturally as far as what professional development does Chelsea need in order to get her where she wants to be in 5 years, whether that's within ES Prep or my own individual goals.
And I think that's really important, and we see that in some of our top school leaders as well. They have those specific, that's part of specific retention conversations. If you know a teacher's ultimate goal is to become an assistant principal or a principal, then you're gonna find ways to make sure that they have experiences so that they will ultimately be able to get to that goal in the meantime. One last question.
Well, just a comment. My principal, Sean Davis, and Ms. Tora, who is the teacher from there, they give out index cards, some personal handwritten notes about the job you're doing. They often put candy in their mailbox. Paydays, you deserve an extra payday. That's candy. Really, they're understanding the value of those kind of words. So those two really work well together, and it definitely helps you choose to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. So the third strategy is making your school a place where collaboration is encouraged. Oftentimes when we go into schools, we hear that teachers do not have enough planning time. And so good school leaders know that teachers need it. They don't always have the opportunity or the time or the space to plan outside of the school day. And so getting creative with your schedule to allow longer blocks of planning time where you can plan individually, you can do vertical alignment, you can plan with your grade level team, is really, really important. The fourth strategy is creating and supporting a positive school culture and improving staff morale, which is so important for our teachers. We know that when morale is low with teachers, it can ultimately trickle down to the classroom and with students. And so making this a priority is really, really important. So whether you choose to do this during critical points of the year, like when testing is beginning, or kind of that low point of the year right after or right before Christmas break, are definitely strategies that you can use. A case study here with Principal Gordon at Jefferson Academy is collaboration, which I love. She has worked her schedule so that every teacher gets 2 hours of planning each day, which is 10 hours of planning a week. A couple of those hours are taken for like school-wide planning things, like data meetings and administrative meetings, but the other ones are for you to plan individually or with teams, which is great. Another thing that I didn't talk about, but I do want to mention, are communication structures. When teachers don't know where to go for certain things, or they don't know how to get information that they need, it can create more stress on them, which ultimately takes away from instruction. And so having a place, whether it's a weekly email or a bulletin that gets sent out, is really, really important, and making it an expectation within your school that everyone reads it is really, really important.
So one last strategy we wanted to share is the importance of ensuring that teachers feel that their voices are being heard and that they have opportunities to provide input on school decisions. As we all know, teachers put so much effort into their own classrooms, into building those cultures and those individual policies and rules for their students, and they have a vested interest in decisions that are going to affect their classroom, their students, and the entire school community. It's something we hear over and over again, as teachers want opportunities to provide feedback on things from hiring to budget to curricular decisions, and teachers have a lot of expertise on those issues that principals can leverage. What's more, though, something we heard echoed repeatedly, we hear constantly throughout our school visits, is the importance of transparent decision making. So teachers want to have their opinion asked and heard, but they want to know that it was listened to. So they want that follow-up from principals, where once a decision is made, they want to know what decision that was and why it was made, so they know that their opinion isn't just being taken to check a box and then it goes in a filing cabinet and never be looked at again. It's definitely something that excellent school leaders take advantage of, opportunities to provide that transparency. One last spotlight that we wanted to quickly highlight is Principal Rachel Skerritt at Eastern Senior High School. She, for 2 hours every day, staffs lunch duty, which has the added side benefit of limiting the amount of teachers who need to provide lunch duty themselves. But these 2 hours every day serve as basically her open office hours, where teachers know that during that time they know where she is in the cafeteria and they can approach her with a question or a concern. If during that conversation, if it looks like that to settle it's going to take more than 5 or 10 minutes, they'll set up an additional meeting where they can actually discuss it in more depth. But it means that teachers know how to find her and how to access her. She also really pushes her high-performing teachers, some might even say strong-arms them, into getting involved in school committees, particularly the personnel committee. That has two major impacts. One is that teachers actually get to provide input on their potential colleagues. And two, it actually means that teachers are helping to screen for new hires who will be positive contributions to the culture they're trying to build, which makes a really big difference. So, one thing to emphasize about this sheet in front of you is that this is not a checklist. It is not a script where a principal who does 16 of these things will retain more teachers than a principal who does 14 of these things. It is a menu of options, and they all need to be tailored to an individual school context. Not all of them will work at every single school. Principal Scarrett, who I just mentioned, actually, for example, found that for the most part, her teachers at Eastern weren't really interested in individual recognition. They were much more comfortable with team recognition. So she actually tends to avoid structures like Teacher of the Month because that's not something that works for her school context. We've strongly encouraged all of you who are school leaders, district leaders, before going back to your schools this fall, take some time to think about 2 or 3 strategies from this sheet that can really fit your school context, can help you improve retention of your high performers. We know we're a little bit short on time, but we did want to definitely leave some time at the end. We're happy to take some Q&A about any of the things we've talked about. We'd also love to provide an opportunity to hear more feedback from the people in this room on strategies that they've tried at their school, challenges they've faced with some of these strategies, and any additional ideas, since we know this sheet is far from a comprehensive list. We'd love to continue that conversation with you guys.
And if there's more stuff about DC, since we are short on time, like our Twitter handles are up there, and that email address goes to all of us, and so happy to continue any of these other conversations in another time too. Anything else that's just like on your minds that's a Q&A or that is happening at your schools that you think the room would benefit from hearing? Yeah.
I just had a question about the LIFT program.
Yeah.
In terms of the different stages of the teacher, does that affect overall staff culture at all? Do teachers feel alienated if they're just a teacher and not an advanced teacher? And if so, how does that play out in a specific school maybe?
I think it varies school to school. Like we hear our teachers in our high poverty schools, because they're eligible for so many more benefits under LIFT, talking about LIFT a whole lot more than teachers in our lower poverty schools. I think it depends on the teacher. Some teachers really wear their LIFT standing as a point of pride. Others, because of school culture factors, are really trying to downplay it. It just really depends. I'd love to hear more, Mr. Robinson, about if you have thoughts on that, about how perceptions of LIFT status look like at the school level.
I mean, I guess I just wonder in terms of let's say there's a first year teacher who is a teacher under the LIFT program, and then there's a teacher who's been teaching for 7 years that is now an advanced teacher. Does that set up some sort of alienation or cliques in terms of the actual culture where it's oh, we're just the teachers and this group is the advanced teachers?
Unfortunately, you're gonna have a clique in any situation. This whole session, we're looking at what the principals do. We talked about, there was one principal who said, I'm not going to do this because that's not what my staff wants. Unfortunately, a lot of teachers who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing or not, or those teachers who aren't maximizing their best at all times, those are the ones who always have a chip on their shoulder, so they're always looking for any little thing. Your LIFT is really personal, so no one really knows unless you share it with them. It's just like your evaluation. Unfortunately, you can get into some problems if someone learns that your score was high and they think their score should be just as high as yours. So a lot of that stuff, unfortunately, how this is set up, I would suggest that you keep a lot of that information to yourself. And what happens is going to happen. Those folks that are upset, I guarantee you, those are the ones who aren't working.
I wanted to share, because we had made the comment earlier, as far as the impact model, it really reminds me of Yes Press model as far as the continuum plan. And except there's just it's one difference, and that's something that's been debatable as far as the pay for performance versus not. And that's like the big difference as far as our continuum plan that we have. And it's something that we developed what's called an IER, which is an instructional excellence rubric, where it's a rubric that we give all of our teachers from day one all the way into throughout their entire teaching career, where we've researched observable specific traits and characteristics and words, word choices and different things that teachers do in the classroom that equate into student actions, therefore student performance. And so we do the same thing as far as rewarding teachers, where they rank as far as novice teacher, advanced teacher, expert teacher, except the only difference as far as it doesn't equate to the scores of the students. And so it is strictly the teacher's performance and what the teacher does in their classroom, and it's them being an instructional leader in their classroom. And so it goes from the instruction, it goes from what you can observe students are doing and how they're engaging and learning, as well as it goes to professionalism and how do you engage in the culture and how do you contribute to the positive culture at Yes Prep. And so on their rubric, they're rated on those things, and so that's where their pay for performance comes from. It comes from teacher performance versus student performance.
Yeah, we got kind of both of that. Next year is actually the first year where about 15% of our teachers who teach in tested grades and subjects have value-added scores, but that's actually going on hiatus next year as we pilot PARC, because we felt like with the transition to the new assessment, people are going to need some time to get used to how that was going to look. So that part of the using the value-added model is going to be on hiatus. I feel like, Kelly, we're at time, aren't we? Okay, guys, I'm going to let you get to your next session, but happy to talk to you more, and thank you so much.